Hello everyone, and welcome back to Peaches and Scream. Tonight's episode is all about the internet, that everyday tool we rely on for everything from work to entertainment can sometimes become a portal to humanity's darkest corners. We're bringing you 3 true stories that reveal how the digital world can become a hunting ground for manipulation, obsession, and exploitation. In our first story, a quiet, lonely man finds solace in an anonymous online forum, but those forums slowly radicalize him into committing an unthinkable crime. In the second, a teenage girl joins what she believes is an emotional support group, only to find herself ensnared in a toxic surveillance-based community that punishes members who try to leave. And finally, a man down on his luck signs up for what appears to be a well-paying clinical trial, only to discover he's been turned into the subject of a horrific human experiment for a dark web audience. Each of these stories is disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Let's begin. David Kalak was a man who blended into the background. 33, divorced, holding down a modest job in Port Orchard, Washington. His co-workers described him as awkward but polite, quiet, a man who mostly kept to himself but never struck anyone as dangerous. Behind that harmless exterior, though, David was slipping into a digital descent. He spent most of his nights online, not on Facebook or YouTube. No, David preferred the lawless outskirts of the internet. Anonymous forums, image boards, the kind of places where users had no usernames, no filters, and no rules. Places like 4chan, or deeper, more obscure boards on sites designed specifically to avoid moderation. At first, David just lurked. He read shock threads, horror stories, fringe conspiracy theories, but over time he started commenting, then posting, and slowly his thoughts shifted. The anonymity gave him freedom, a place to vent his worst ideas without judgment. But it also exposed him to something more sinister, communities that validated his darkest impulses. He began frequenting threads labeling things like Real Killers Anonymous and Morbid Curiosity Club. In them, users shared photos of crime scenes, autopsy reports, and speculation about unsolved murders. The posts were often cloaked in irony, jokes, and memes, but the undercurrent was real fascination, and David soaked it in. He started asking questions. How long does it really take to strangle someone? What's the cleanest way to stage a suicide? Some laughed him off, others engaged. They gave him detailed answers, diagrams, even links to obscure documents written by forensic scientists and prison guards. In October of 2014, David met a woman named Amber Lynn Copeland. She was 30, a mother, and renting an apartment not far from his. They started seeing each other casually, nothing serious. But something about Amber triggered something in David. In a now-deleted thread he posted anonymously, "Ever look at someone and think, you don't deserve to live?" On November 4th, David didn't show up to work. Instead, he was on his computer, posting again. This time it wasn't a question, it was a statement, and a photo. The post read, "Turns out it's harder to strangle someone than you'd think." Attached was a picture of a woman's lifeless face. People on the forum exploded. Some said it was fake, others insisted it looked too real. David followed up with a second post. "Check the news tomorrow, she was too loud." And then a third. 1220 Sydney Avenue. I'm done running. Authorities were notified. Police found Amber's body just as it appeared in the photo. David had killed her and documented it for an anonymous audience. What disturbed investigators most wasn't just the crime. It was the calm, casual tone of his messages. David fled across state lines, and a manhunt ensued. For 2 days, his story dominated the internet. Finally, he turned himself in Oregon. In court, he claimed he had been in a fugue state, but digital forensics showed he had spent weeks researching methods, lurking in threads that encouraged him, emboldened him. He wasn't radicalized overnight. He was slowly pulled under by a tide of validation. David was sentenced to 82 years in prison. In his final statement to the court, he said, "The internet led me to become someone I never should have been. I didn't kill Amber because I hated her. I killed her because I'd convinced myself it was normal." The forums he frequented were later investigated and partially shut down. But like most things on the internet, they just reappeared under different names. To this day, threads still circulate that discuss David's posts. Some users still call him a legend. Others claim his story was a hoax. But one thing is clear. Amber Lynn Copeland was very real, and she died at the hands of a man who felt encouraged and empowered and entertained by the very worst that the internet had to offer. Rachel had always struggled with body image. At 18, she left for college and quickly felt the pressure many young women experience, to be thin, perfect, and in control. When a friend suggested she check out a support group online called Pro-Ana-Nation, Rachel thought she'd found a safe space. The website looked innocent enough. Pale pink backgrounds, butterfly graphics, inspirational quotes. But within the forums, a different tone emerged. The users didn't treat anorexia like an illness. They treated it like a lifestyle, even a religion. They referred to anorexia as Anna, like she was a person. Posts read things like, "Anna is always with me. Anna helps me stay pure." Users created rituals, challenges, even prayers. And there were rules. Rule 1, never eat more than 500 calories a day. Rule 2, always post your weight. Rule 3, if you break the rules, you confess. At first, Rachel ignored the stricter aspects. She just wanted a place to talk. But the community was seductive. Users praised each other for losing weight, shamed anyone who faltered. It became addictive. Rachel began to post daily. She started hiding food. Then she stopped eating altogether. But when Rachel expressed concern and hinted at wanting to leave, the tone shifted. She received private messages. "You can't leave Anna. Anna sees everything. Your progress will be erased." Then things escalated. An anonymous email arrived in her university inbox. It contained photos of her walking home. Another had audio recordings of her dorm room, captured through her laptop microphone. She was being watched. Terrified, Rachel contacted campus police. They traced the emails to a VPN, but couldn't pinpoint the sender. A cybersecurity firm later discovered that Pro-Ana-Nation had embedded spyware into its users' profiles. Simply clicking on certain threads gave admins access to microphones, cameras, even keystroke logs. Rachel wasn't alone. A Reddit survivor thread formed years later, where dozens of women shared their stories. Some had been stalked, others blackmailed. One girl was doxxed and had her private journals emailed to her family. Rachel withdrew from school. She sought therapy and eventually moved home. It took her over a year to eat normally again, and even longer to trust technology. For months, she wouldn't touch a computer without taping over the webcam. An FBI investigation into Pro-Ana-Nation was quietly launched, but due to jurisdictional issues and the anonymity of the dark web, no arrests were ever made. The site was finally taken down in 2016 after being linked to several teen suicides, but survivors believe the moderator simply created a new version under a different name. Rachel now speaks anonymously to other survivors of online psychological abuse. In a podcast interview, she summed up her experience. "It didn't just take my health, it took my sense of safety. I used to think monsters lived under the bed. Now I know some live behind keyboards." In 2012, Marcus J. was desperate. A former mechanic in Berlin, he'd lost his job and was living paycheck to paycheck doing odd work. One night, browsing a dark web classified site, he saw an offer that seemed too good to be true. $2,000 cash. Spend 48 hours in our facility. No harm, no sex, no long-term risk. Food, bed, and transport provided. Must be recorded for research purposes. He applied. A masked figure responded and scheduled a pickup. Marcus was blindfolded and driven several hours and led into what looked like an underground lab. The place was sterile, windowless, and covered in cameras. There were no logos and no staff names. He was shown a room with a metal cot, a toilet, and a red button labeled Exit. There was a single camera pointing at his face. A voice on a speaker welcomed him. The test begins now. Do not attempt to tamper with the equipment. At first it was boring. Then came the lights, flashing randomly, blazing hot temperatures followed by freezing cold. Screams through the speaker, then silence. No food, then too much food. Psychological warfare. Every now and then, a screen on the wall would flash a question. What would you do for freedom? Would you betray someone for food? On the second night, Marcus began hallucinating. He begged to leave. He pressed the exit button, but nothing happened. On the third day, the door opened. A man in a lab coat, face obscured by a mask, handed him an envelope of cash and a burner phone. Thank you. Your footage will help us learn more. Marcus vanished from public life. After the video of his test surfaced, he gave one anonymous interview to a German journalist saying, "It wasn't about money, it was about control. They wanted to see how much you could take before breaking, and I broke." He now lives under a different name in a different country. Rumors swirled that he was paid more than just $2,000, perhaps to keep quiet. He'd never confirmed this. Cybersecurity analysts believe the experiment was run by a decentralized network of anonymous users, possibly funded through cryptocurrency. But no concrete suspects were ever named. The burner phone he was given, wiped clean, no trace. The facility he described has never been found. Some believe it was a mobile setup. Others think it still exists, operating in another country. But every so often, the ad resurfaces. Weekend experiment, $3,000, total anonymity. And someone always answers. The internet is a powerful tool, but sometimes in the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon. These stories weren't fiction. They were pulled from real police reports, survivor accounts, and court records, and they're still happening. If you liked tonight's episode, please hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a new Peaches and Scream story. We release weekly true stories based on reality because, as you know, reality is often far scarier than fiction. Until next time, stay smart, stay skeptical, and maybe think twice before clicking that anonymous link. Thanks for listening.